I think COVID was really a huge disservice for the younger generations. And I think this whole kind of working from home, you can kind of disappear. I think one of the things that I had early on was getting visibility, being visible to
good point.
Management,
Right.
and being able to present to management, being able to work on something for someone got you recognized.
Being available is half the battle.
It's not we want to penalize them, right, to have to come to an office, but really being visible,
Right.
That the value of being seen.
Hey, before we jump into the podcast, we want to thank all our donors and supporters who make the Today Count show possible. It's through your generosity that we're able to shape leaders through this content and this podcast. And be sure to like, subscribe, and follow wherever you find yourself coming across this content. All right, let's get to the podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Today Count show. I'm excited that you are listening again, and be sure to if you love the content, if you love these podcasts, be sure to tell others about it. I've got a very special guest, a friend, a colleague, a client. Gosh, there's all kinds of labels that we could probably give one another. We'll talk about that in a little bit, and I'll introduce him in just a minute. But before I do, if you've been on the podcast, if you've listened to the podcast enough, you know that I have referred to a habit that I've had in my life probably since I was a teenager that I have to give credit to my parents for. But if you're business minded, if you're wisdom minded, there is a book in the Bible called Proverbs. It's got 31 chapters in it, and I read a chapter a day. The chapter I read corresponds with the day of the month. Now, I'd be lying to say I do it every day, but I do it more often than I don't. So today is the 11th, that we are recording on the 11th of the month. And there were a few verses that I wanted to read that I thought really fit the discussion that you're going to listen to today. In Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14, it says, "Where there is no guidance, a people falls. But in an abundance of counselors, there is safety." I want to read that again. Where there is no guidance, where there is no vision, where there is no direction, people fall, people fail. But in an abundance of counselors, there is safety. So that speaks to me a ton about leadership, a ton about wisdom, a ton about vision. So I thought that was worth reading. Just a few verses later in verse 17, the first part of verse 17 says, "A man who is kind benefits himself." I thought that was a pretty significant nugget that stuck out for me today. And this next one is very similar. It's verse 24. It says, one gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want. I thought that was a great way to kind of set up this podcast today. Today, I have with me Zach McGuire. Zach McGuire is the president of an organization within an organization that we call Power Delivery within the company that we call MasTec. He is a leader that I respect, and I'm so excited about getting involved with some things with you, Zach. So welcome to the show.
Jim, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for flying to San Antonio.
You bet. It's nice and cool today. You're in San Antonio.
It's never cool in San Antonio. I guess it is sometimes. maybe 20 or 30 times a year, something like that. But I'm so excited that you would fly down, come to in studio. In studio is so much better. I mean, we're right here together. So I'm hoping today that we get to talk about leadership, a lot of things that you have learned, and I've even written down a bunch of questions, for you. But the obvious one, let's start with MasTec as a company. Tell us a little bit about MasTec. What does it do? What is it? Where is it? All that.
Well, first and foremost, thank you very much. I was thinking we've known each other now for I think 15 plus years.
Yeah, I think
right?
so.
Yeah, it's and I've just I appreciate everything you've done for me personally and the organization. So I just wanted to kind of start with that.
That's kind. Thank you.
So MasTec, I've been with MasTec 18 years, believe it or not, actually, as of July 21st. It's to kind of see what the company has transformed into is pretty amazing,
Yeah,
actually. So
for sure.
I'll take you back to 2007.
Okay.
MasTec was basically a telecom company. So providing services to the telecommunications industry via installation services, you know, traditional phone
Yeah.
and fiber.
Okay.
And then we've really
So television, the cable television.
yeah.
Yeah.
So DirecTV, we're the
Okay.
largest DirecTV
Right.
installer in the United States, still today,
Right.
actually. But if you go back to 2007, we were just short of $1 billion in revenue, and today we're 13 billion. And really, if you go back to our roots in the telecom business, we really used that business to diversify our company into what we are today, which is really transformed completely from one industry to another.
Right.
In the infrastructure business.
Yeah.
So we provide infrastructure to many different markets.
I think I learned that term from you about 4 or 5 years ago, that if there was one term to describe MasTec, it would be infrastructure.
Infrastructure,
Yeah.
yes. Providing infrastructure from everything from oil and gas to telecommunications
Right.
to cell phone towers to wind, solar, electricity, and water, sewer. We also even build stadiums. So we're really kind of many different facets of what the company has grown into over the past.
And there's one
2 decades.
unique stadium that's being built right now.
Right now, down in
the
Miami,
Miami area.
yeah,
the soccer.
for Inter Miami.
Yeah.
So our bosses own Inter Miami and founded that just 2020. Right,
Okay.
their first game was actually canceled because of COVID in March
Oh.
of 2020. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course that team has gotten a lot of recognition lately due to the what do you call it, recruiting of
Messi.
Yeah.
So really probably one of the best players of all time.
Oh yeah,
Right. And,
right.
Coming into the United States, playing for an MLS team has really driven a lot of new attraction to the sport in the United States, which is it's not as big here as it is in Europe.
No, but man, what a fit for Miami.
Yeah. Well, perfect fit for Miami.
Yeah, I mean, I just love being in that Coral Gables, Miami area, because it's just that international flavor, that you get. You hear all different kinds of languages, and that's where the headquarters is, right? In that area.
Our headquarters
Okay.
in Coral Gables.
Yeah. But what about Power Delivery itself?
Yeah, so I head up Power Delivery. I've been actually doing that for about the past 4.5 years, which was actually a really completely new segment for me, and a completely new experience. I'm
It's a new segment for MasTec too, right?
We've actually been doing, providing electricity just on a smaller basis for actually, we did a little gas as well.
Okay.
Probably for the past 20 years or so.
Yeah.
But we if you go back to, May of 21 is kind of where we formed the segment, if you will, from an operational perspective. We've always had it from a public reporting perspective.
Okay.
But we really went on kind of a acquisition tear for a while. So I kind of like to say, in May of 21, we were about $500 million or so in revenue. And we woke up January of 22 and we're $3 billion in revenue.
Right.
And, this year we'll do just about $4 billion in revenue in the power delivery segment. Which is, everything from transmission to building substations to distribution, working for electric companies across the United States, and also building what I like to call the big transmission lines in the middle of nowhere. And I think, everybody's talked about what's driving kind of the power delivery business.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really the need for electricity. There's a couple things. One, the infrastructure in the United States is very old. The power lines just outside of this, that power your house here, are probably 1950 technology.
Yeah.
So the need for electricity around the data centers, around just the need for electricity in general, is just unbelievable.
Just what Elon Musk himself needs.
just to power the electric cars, right? Yeah. So it's really driving our business, and it's just taken off the need for the qualified people to be able to work on those lines. From a safety perspective, we spend a lot of time talking about and making sure our people are safe.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that definitely keep me up at night as a leader, is making sure that our people go home safe at night. to their families.
All kinds of moving pictures went through my mind as you were describing power delivery, Zach, because I've been learning, kind of jogging next to you in this business. I've been learning, and I've picked up all kinds of hallway conversations with your leaders and different things. So, for example, I knew literally nothing about what you've been talking about until X amount of years ago. And some of the stuff I picked up is like, lots of places in Louisiana, you're not going to bury your cable lines because of all the swamps. So now you're building it above the water. And so that's got to be a certain level of complication and technique that you do. In other places, you bury this. And, just driving up the highway to my house, I can see both transmission lines and distribution lines and substations, all of these different terms. So, just for the layperson who's going, what are these guys talking about? It's literally those, what sometimes looks like, in some cases, looks as small as telephone poles with power lines on them. And then you see those big mini Eiffel Tower type things that has the transmission lines on them. And then those little areas that have all those funny looking gizmos, that are storing and moving and transmitting electricity. So that is a lot of stuff. Let's talk about your resume for a little bit. How did you even get involved in this?
That's a great question. It's kind of funny. I like to tell the story of, May of 21, just 4.5 years ago, I didn't know anything about electricity. AC/DC was a band as far as I was concerned, and my boss, Bob Apple, called me in and said, hey, we really we need you to run our power delivery segment. And I got to tell you, out of the gate, it was really scary. I actually, a couple things, for me, for going into something that I didn't know much about, I really thought that, one, having to learn that piece, not being an engineer by trade, coming from the telecom business, it would be a big obstacle. The other thing is about 80% of our workforce is union. And I
80%.
80%.
Wow.
And I had actually been a non-union guy forever, right?
Right.
Telecom's mainly non-union. And so I always kind of worked in a non-union environment. And actually, if we were unionized in where I worked, we would lose our territory. And so those couple things really scared me. What's interesting today, and I fast forward now, I actually haven't had one union issue cross my desk. Actually,
wow.
It's actually the union.
In how many years?
In 4.5 years.
Okay.
The union really works well in this industry, in the power delivery space. The IBW primarily has been the electric workers for years and years and years, and it actually it's kind of really harmonized, and they really work well together, and it's in an important piece of our business. And then really learning the business. We're gonna talk about this today.
Yeah.
It really boils down to the people piece. This is, at the end of the day, this is a people business.
Yeah.
And a P&L is a P&L.
Right.
And
profit and loss for those who.
And if you would ask me that, 4.5 years ago, I would have said, no, I need to really. My biggest obstacle is going to be not understanding the work. Well, you can learn the work.
Mm-hmm.
You can go out and spend time in the field with the employees and with the guys, and learn how the transmission lines are built, how the distribution works.
Mm-hmm.
What you can't learn is how the people piece of this really comes together.
Let's talk about the people for a minute. How many employees?
So just short of 13,000.
So around 13,000 in power delivery.
Right.
What kind of employees? What are they doing? Just give a little broad overview of. I mean, for example, I know enough to know that we have linemen, and the linemen literally work on the power lines.
Yes,
that's an example. But what are some other type of employees that would work under your umbrella?
Yeah. So linemen, obviously, that's who we support in the field.
Yeah.
But we have all different aspects of not only the folks that work on the lines, but the people that support the linemen.
Right.
So you have some groundmen. You have people that observe, what's going on, especially from a safety perspective, right? When they're up on the line, there's someone at the truck, there's someone running the equipment.
So there's heavy equipment operators.
Heavy equipment. And then also there's people that are making sure that everything's safe. So, the power lines are sometimes on a street. And so making sure that everything's coned off properly, that so it creates a safe environment, not only up on the line, but around the workspace as well.
Right.
And then you've got everything from project controls to project management to fleet to our safety professionals.
Fleet meaning anything with wheels on it.
Yep.
Right.
It could be actually anything, we kind of fleet would mainly be things with wheels, but also just all of our tooling, all the tools that go in the different vehicles. And
the architect for this kind of work would be like engineers.
Yep.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. And then of course there's all the back office stuff. I mean, you got to have attorneys, you have bookkeeping, you've got, you already mentioned project management, but anything you related to that. And then you got layers of management and leadership.
Yeah. And procurement actually is a really big piece of our business as well. Is, a lot of our customers will provide the materials we need, but there's a lot of the jobs that we do on a larger scale that require procurement. So you get and there's sometimes lead times with some of the steel, some of the wire we use. And so that's actually a really, really critical piece, because it's almost that just in time type aspect. Otherwise you have a lot of expensive materials that we really can't have sit around, right? So we need to make sure that it kind of comes in all in just in time.
Yeah. Now you mentioned something earlier, then we'll jump back into the people part, that our infrastructure is old. And so where that sent my mind is, well, first of all, the country continues to expand, whether we should be or not, I don't know, in regards to natural resources. But so I would imagine what you're talking about is, when you mention that it's old, so it's not all new construction. There's maybe a lot of it that's replacing old.
Yep. So there's some replacement.
Okay.
But there's also what we kind of call, as an example, storm hardening. So for instance, let's take Florida as an example, with the hurricanes that go through and wipe the lines out and get back and rebuild them. Well, so what Florida Power and Light as an example is doing is going through and undergrounding the wires, so they're protected from the storms that come through. So it's a very, very big investment that's happening right now from a storm hardening perspective.
Yeah.
So it's not just the upgrading of the old stuff, but also making sure that they can protect it from the different weather environment. Also, like out west with all the wildfires.
Yeah.
Right. So they're actually undergrounding a lot of the wires that have caused some of these big wildfires out west. And that's kind of happening across the United States.
Right. And now, you triggered some more memory. You also have companies within the company, if you will, that work on trimming trees around power lines.
Yep.
Both in a precautionary way, but also, all right.
We call that vegetation management.
Vegetation management.
And really, because sometimes you have a tree that's over a line, it grows over a line, that can actually start a fire.
Right.
So we have veg management companies that you really maintain that veg management around the lines proactively.
So hurricanes don't normally touch the hill country of Texas, although one has. One reached to this house and actually knocked down branches here and destroyed some fencing and knocked over even a palm tree. But certainly Houston gets hit a lot. So let's take that case. Houston gets hit with a hurricane, power goes down. Is MasTec out there in those kind of situations?
Yeah. So then actually we have a whole business around storm.
Okay.
So storm is where we, and actually what's really cool is all the utilities work together and release crews locally to go help in storm type situations. So the big hurricane that came through Florida and the Carolinas last year was devastating. And I think we had 1,600 people down working that storm. So a couple things. One, cleanup.
Yeah.
And then but most important is to restore power.
Well, where do you get these people if they're already on jobs and then you got a storm? Do they come off of jobs?
Yeah. So it's kind of mutual assistance is what they call it. And our crews will be released from, let's say we're working for ComEd in Chicago. They'll release us to go help in Houston as an example on storm specifically to restore power mainly.
Now, I kind of cut you off at the pass. You were starting to talk a little bit about your resume and how you got into this, and then I think I hijacked you for a little bit. You first entered MasTec as what, doing what?
Yeah, so actually, I'll take it real quick way back.
Yeah.
I actually used to install cable TV in college during
All right.
in the summer, and I actually got an internship with a company called Telecommunications (TCI).
Okay.
And that's kind of where I cut my teeth
Yeah.
in the cable TV
So you
business
literally,
specifically
were installing cable.
in the summertime.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the summer as an intern.
Yeah. I
And
can't see
actually,
you doing that.
yeah, no, and I wasn't very good at it, by the way.
That's great.
But I got to tell you, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
With that opportunity I had, and I actually used to caddy for the chief operating officer at TCI,
Okay.
and he basically said, "Look, I think you'd be good in our intern or manager training program."
So
call me
you
after
you went through a management training program.
I did, yeah. It was very kind of informal,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I started as a manager trainee, right when I got out of college, and worked in the summers for a couple of years while I was in college, and then I went into it. It was really geared to going and managing a cable system in a
Okay.
smaller area, but I really, being early 20s. Moving to a small town. Actually, some of them were in Texas, actually.
Okay.
Or it was geared towards, and I went to call center management, went to network operations. We launched the first high-speed cable modems.
So they had you like dive into each of those areas a little bit
Yep.
to gain some knowledge.
Yep, from everything from marketing to legal to operations.
A little bit off topic, but why do you think we see less and less management training programs today? Because, probably one of the highlights of my life was a 1 year, very formal management program at Bank of America when I was just a kid. But we're seeing less and less of that. Why do you think that? I mean,
Yeah, I think there's kind of this go kind of there's not enough time in the day.
quadrant one.
But I actually think that's something we really need to get back to. I've tried to kind of keep it alive. I've actually kind of in a giving back perspective is actually kids that I have caddy for me. If I really have built a good relationship, I'll offer them jobs. And actually, I've had probably 5 or 6 people take me up on it, and actually 2 of them I keep in touch with today. And they've gone in different directions, but we're with our company for just short of 10 years, which was really neat to see. And it's kind of where I started, and it was really foundational for me. And so, but it's something. You're right. It's something we don't do enough of, and I think it's unfortunate, especially for the younger generation.
Yeah, set aside the details of banking. Along with those things, the things that they taught me, as silly as it sounds, is I came from a wonderful home, but it was middle class at best, and so we learned about the finer things in life. We learned about how to dress. I'm a short guy, and they said don't ever wear horizontal striped shirts. Silly things like that. And I don't even know if this is still true in fashion, but they taught me that the bottom cut of the tie should be the same length of the collar of your shirt. Those kinds of things. And of course, when you sit down at a fancy restaurant or an event and you've got forks and knives everywhere, how to navigate that situation. But also more in-depth things too, like time management, how to have hard conversations, being aware of your own emotions. How to process through those kinds of things, and then of course we learned the trade. We learned how to analyze tax returns and spreadsheets in our day. Of course, we didn't have the technology then that we have now. So when I say spreadsheets, these are literal manual journal like spreadsheets that we used to do. But I look back in fondness, of that time. So that's just a little bit of a digression, I guess, in our conversation, maybe something that will come up a little bit later. I think it's great that you share the story that you actually, were running cable, and also how you got introduced to it. I think that some people who look at your position, the president of a $4 billion organization, they don't really take the time to think that you had a beginning too. They just kind of see you fixed in this position. Zach McGuire, president, boom, that's you. Let's I know that we're going to spend a lot of time getting into the people side of this conversation today, but maybe if we could start with Zach McGuire, if you were to talk about your rhythms, your strengths, how you communicate, how you plan, how you delegate, how you empower, maybe what you're good at there, what you're not good at there, just how do you see yourself at this stage in your career? What does it look like for you? What is your leadership approach,
Yeah.
if that's the best way to say it?
Yeah, I know. It's actually it's changed a lot. As you start, in your 20s, and now, being in the business world for 25, 30 years now. Yeah, it's over 30 years. It's really my leadership style's changed a lot. And I was knew we were going to kind of talk about this, and I kind of have reflected a lot of, what kind of leader was I, back
Yeah.
25 years ago versus today. And what I keep coming back to is leadership's really about building a team. But to build a team, it's just like in sports, right? You have to, they all have, everything kind of has to click together. But at the core, it's really understanding what makes someone tick, right? What are the needs of that person? And the more you can understand that, what drives them, the better you can help them.
That's really good.
Which helps the team be
Yeah.
successful.
Well, how do you find that out? How do you figure
I really think it goes coming back to conversations. It's not about the business, right? We always kind of jump to, okay, how's the P&L doing?
Right.
But even that simple question of, when you call someone up and right before we get to it, and it's kind of even like you and I talk is, hey, how are you in the day? Because you never know what someone's actually going through.
Right.
What happened that morning? What happened the night before? What happened? What's going on in their personal life? Which actually matters, because those type of things can be heavy. They can be good. They can be bad. But if you really understand what's happening with them, even from a health perspective, or their parents or their kids, the better you'll be able to really just help them be successful.
Why do you think so much of leadership doesn't talk about that?
Look, there's 36,000 business books, leadership, published annually, I think,
Right,
something like that. And none of them talk about that.
Yeah.
None of them talk about, hey, just sitting down and getting to know that person as a person.
Right.
And really what makes them tick.
It sounds soft to a lot of people.
It does. Yeah, I think it does. And look, when you're, leadership is also about hiring, and you and I've talked a lot about that, but really hiring someone that you don't know. And you can ask the best interview questions. You can do as much research on the person as you can, but at the end of the day, it's a coin flip.
Yeah, it really is.
It really is. And so quickly finding out if they're going to be a good fit, in the first kind of 90 days is very important.
There have been seasons in my life where I've looked back and I thought, what was that even about? Did I grow in that season? Did I get better? Am I still stuck in that season? If you have similar thoughts, I want to introduce you to a book called Story, The Art of Learning from Your Past. This book, written by Jim Piper, shares principles and stories that actually help us get unstuck and step into the future we've always wanted. Be sure to stop by leadtodaycommunity.com to grab your copy today.
Good. You and I have talked about this, at least 10 times, maybe 100 times. And the person who has shaped me the most in the way I think about leadership and I think about management was Peter Drucker, who's no longer with us. But his ideas still radiate, through a lot of my conversations. And, he said that he was a global advisor. So he had tons and tons of experience. And as he got older, man, his insights were so powerful. But one of the things he said is that, you should have a hiring process. You should have that. You should figure out how you want to go through the process. But even if you create a great hiring process, even if the whole world looks at it and says, now that is a good hiring process, you still only have a 33% chance of hitting a home run.
Yeah.
So that means that still 66% is going, and then he broke that up into halves, that 33 of the, half of the 66 is going to be a train wreck. And then the other one's going to be maybe a no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
Which really, brings, I think, your point to light. If leaders need to get better at anything, it's about people.
Yeah.
It's really about people.
And actually, Jim, sometimes, someone leaves an organization or you have to, exit them out of the organization. It's not that they're a bad person.
Yeah.
All the time, right? There
Right.
are,
Right.
but at the end of the day, they just aren't a good fit
Yeah.
for the team.
Now sometimes people are calling that cop out fit because we use that a lot. So go into that more.
Yeah.
Fit.
Yeah. Well, it's a really good question, right? Because what is fit, right?
Right.
Even if you kind of look at just like sports teams, right? And they could be the best player on the field, they could have the most experience, but they just don't fit with that team. That team, but even maybe the culture of the organization,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sometimes the entire culture of the organization, which kind of can have a life of its own. When we have 400 plus offices across the United States, there's different cultures within all of those different units.
So fit is a real thing. The challenge is explaining how or why the person doesn't fit.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes it can even be situational, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is they thought the job was going to be a certain, they had, early on a vision of what the job was going to be,
Mm-hmm.
or what the culture of the company was going to be. And it doesn't fit for them.
That's a good example.
And it could even be just timing, right?
Well, even if you were to hire me, now that I'm much more self-aware than I was many years ago, what I know about myself that would directly relate to fit is that if you needed something, start it. And to me, start it means from now for 3 years. If you needed something, start it. I'm your guy. If you needed something to be turned around, it is a mess and it needs to be turned around. That's probably the same amount of time now for 3 years. I'm your guy. But if you're looking for that maintainer, that steady Eddie who's going to come in every day at a certain time, leave at a certain time, I'm not your guy.
No, me neither.
I'm going to be bored to tears.
Yep.
If it's crisis, I'm your guy. If it's get into a big old think tank, probably not. Probably not.
Yeah,
Probably
and
not.
I think when in that act determining what you are first and foremost,
Yeah.
and then what do you need to complement you as a leader?
Yes,
is also very important too, right? Is what I'm similar to you. I'm more of a kind of turnaround
Right.
crisis type. That's where I really thrive and get motivated, and part of it is because I've been put in those situations where either
I think that's why we
company
understand
needs to
each
turn
other.
Yeah. And I think, but you also need those people that can maintain the business, right?
Yeah.
The P&L, the safety protocols, the project management, and that kind of stuff just needs to kind of work.
And age has something to do with it too. Perspective. I'm going to say something funny here. I think is funny. Is that when I was younger and played golf, and even though I'm small in stature, there was a day where I could hit the ball pretty decently. And so if there was if you and I are playing golf and there's a question that I might be able to get it over the lake and I'm younger, I'm going for it.
Yeah.
Now I know I can't get over the lake, so I'm going to lay up. So, age, hopefully, and not in all cases, but in some cases, adds to the context.
Yeah.
And so I am going to lay up because I know I can't. And that. Now, if you want somebody on in your charity foursome to hit long off the tee, don't call me. But if you want somebody who plays from 150 in pretty competitively, then call me. It's so a lot of times it's not a personal thing. It really is. Is it a fit? But sometimes it's a personal thing, don't you think too? There are some that they're just their attitude, like for example, in safety. I mean, you want somebody who literally might be a pain in everybody's butt, because they're so focused on safety, because there is a loss of life in your business.
Yes, there is.
And so they got to take it seriously. But what a unique role to be head of safety, because on one hand, they've got to be so diligent about it. On the other hand, they got to be able to sell it.
Yep. And really, you really need to create a culture of allowing people to call things out.
Yeah.
If they see something, say something.
Yeah.
Right. To make sure that we can prevent, 100% of the accidents are preventable, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and it's not about fault. It's not about who's
Yeah.
at fault. It's not about what went wrong. It's really about making sure that we can be repetitive and predictable around what we're doing.
Yeah.
So and actually, what's interesting is you would think, and there are electrical type safety incidents, where people a flash, what's called, or get electrocuted,
Mhm.
God forbid. But mainly our safety issues are slips and falls, cuts, and the number one accident we have is driving.
Hmm.
And distracted driving specifically.
Yeah.
So you'd think about we were out here on these electrical lines all the time, but at the end of the day, it's the things that happen driving to the job site, driving home.
Does your car do this? I just bought a brand new Land Cruiser and I didn't know it did this, but whenever I look away from the road, it not only gives me this sound, but also this message comes up that says "distracted driver."
Oh yeah, yeah.
It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
You can't even look around, for a second. Well, and I do want to talk about safety a little bit more later, but let's get back to what you're saying about your leadership and that you're really looking at this thing called team, and that leadership ultimately is about building this team and complementing. Can we get a little personal?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, so let's use what you're trying to build right now, your inner circle. Let's. What is it that you're trying to build around you right now? What type of person do you think will fit into this inner circle that you're trying to build? What are you looking for from this person? And I'm assuming, maybe not, but I'm assuming that some of the attributes will be to complement your leadership style.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I think you has someone. A good fit starts with someone that likes a lot of change.
Okay.
Right. This is, as you kind of described earlier, this business in particular, there's a lot of change happening.
A lot of
right
change.
now. There's going to be over the next decade. There's a lot that needs to get done, and really having that team and really the workforce in general, to get everything that needs to be done, is just critical. And I think being able to be nimble and embracing change, right, and kind of forward leadership, really, and out with everyone, helping them be successful.
So too much rigidity would be someone who really needs a rigid process, a rigid schedule, a rigid even expectations. Probably not.
Doesn't fit.
Probably doesn't fit. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and and it's actually, it can be very frustrating too, right?
Yeah.
So these big jobs that we do,
Yeah.
can have a lot of different pitfalls, right? So you really making sure that we have the right project controls in place is a tedious, very very tedious job. So it's someone that's got to be very well documented. Attention to detail is crucial. And that's not me, right? I'm not good at that piece, but that has to be our foundation to make sure that kind of everything works well together.
So let me interpret that, because it sounds a little bit like they're at odds with one another, because so you need somebody who is good at painting the train while it's rolling down the tracks.
That's actually really well said.
Okay. And so that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. So somebody who wants to create processes,
and we're building the track at the same time,
and we're building the track and the train.
Yeah.
So that is, and so that person, obviously, those kinds of people exist, but they're going to be a minority out there. So that would then inform you probably that, man, I really like this guy, I really like this gal, I really, really do, but probably not a fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think even, we talked a little bit about the industry and what has to happen, from a transformation perspective in the electrical world, specifically in power delivery, over the next 2 decades. Actually, we're going to have to create those people. We, if a lot of people got away from really the trade, if you will. But this trade is actually a very, very good job. And actually, you can build a very, very good career.
Man, that's really good
in
insight.
the trade.
That's really good insight, because I've talked to some that are on your team, some that are older than both of us. And, we look back to the 1980s, give or take, that, there was a lot of sociological, economic earthquakes that happened in the 80s in gas, in the world of finance, the global international world of finance. And it eventually rippled out into infrastructure things to where there seemed to be this massive swipe at relieving so many people out of their profession in those verticals that when those things came back, we were like missing a generation or two of people. So this idea of almost recreating leaders and not just leaders, craftsmen,
Yeah.
right, in these areas, that seems pretty insightful. Which kind of brings me back to, maybe we'll harp on it some more, but maybe it is a time for big companies to come back to management training ideas.
You know what? I think that's kind of where we started, Jim.
Yeah.
And the more I even think about just sitting here today, it's where we need to invest
Yeah.
our time
Yeah.
and dollars.
Hmm.
Because if we don't have that create that new leader, if you will,
Yeah.
to be able to lead, not manage.
Yeah.
Not manage. The people don't need to be managed.
Right.
They need to be led. Right.
Yeah.
And I really think that's important. And I think there's a very small
Mm-hmm.
yet specific distinction between the two.
Yeah.
And being a teammate,
Mm-hmm.
not just the boss, right?
Mm-hmm.
The days of the boss are gone.
Right.
Right. It's leading is much different than being a boss.
Well, that's good.
We can go out and tell, hey, I can go out and tell someone what to do all day long, but actually getting them to do it is much
Yeah.
more difficult.
Yeah.
But that's the trick, and that's the art of leadership
Mm.
is being able to lead
Mhm.
lead the team as a team, and not only just the leader, but as a teammate,
Mhm.
part of that, because you're part of that team as
Yeah.
the leader.
Yeah.
And to your point earlier about making sure that you have the right compliments, right,
Yeah.
that complement your weaknesses,
Right.
and vice versa for them as well,
Interesting.
because that then builds loyalty and team members that'll be with you for decades.
So while you're looking to build this team, what are the challenges that you just seem to face over and over and over again in our current world?
Yeah, actually, in this industry in particular, just to I know all industries have these issues, but it does seem like there are a lot of people that do move around from company to company.
Yeah.
And part of it is where the work is, right?
Mhm.
So if a particular company has a big job, as an example, we're doing a really big job for NV Energy out in Nevada, and so we need at the peak, I think we'll have 600 people working on the job. And so when you have a big job like that, people will come to that job.
Right.
But when that job's over, unless you have something to back it up, they'll go to the next job, which could be with a different company.
So that has bred that has bred a culture right there. Just the practicalities of this kind of work. Is there any way to keep those people on the payroll?
Well, yeah. So that's what we spent a lot of time doing is, okay, hey, we got this job today.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that we can put those folks to work on the next job. And so
Yeah.
we really want them to stay with the company.
Yeah.
Right. And so investing in them in further training programs, making sure, and actually sometimes even a different skill set within the job.
Mhm.
Right. So, we have people that are very specific to pulling wire as an example, but can we also train them to be able to work in the substations as an example? And, but at the end of the day, it's also, you have to have the work. So that next job and knowing when one job's going to ramp down and the next one's going to ramp up.
Because there really isn't such thing as backlog, right? Because your customer's not going to wait.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and some of them are some of these jobs, specifically are happening all at the same time,
Yeah.
right? Just from the power needs, right? I
Right.
think the line we're building today will take us the next 3 years to build this line. It's over 700 miles of transmission.
Sounds like the only solution is a global hostile takeover.
Yeah. Well, and in this that line as an example is already oversold,
Yeah.
and it's not even a commission yet.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. Of just you think about what's just happening from a
So what happens? The
perspective.
developers go somewhere else? I mean, what?
Yeah, once that's built, that there's a bunch of those in the pipeline that will continue to be built too. And then what's happening with the data centers is driving a lot of this as well.
How are you wooing new the younger people into this vertical? Is MasTec, does it have a plan of how it's wooing the young?
Yeah. So in our union business, actually, that's where the union is very, very, very helpful.
Okay.
An organization called NICA, and they really breed a lot of these people into this industry for
So
us.
revitalizing the whole trade industry.
Exactly.
Okay.
And specifically in transmission and distribution.
Yeah.
Now, on the non-union side, that's actually where we as a company have to really build that workforce. So we bring people in, and you can have really no skills coming in, and we can train you from starting as a ground person to becoming a lineman. And so we have those programs, and specifically in our non-union side of the business.
What do you most appreciate when you are looking out at the horizon and you look at your team and you see things that make you smile and you want to pat them on the back and you want to give them a hug and you want to affirm them? What are those things that you see?
Well, starting at the lineman level first, and I'm just really big on the field organization. Right? At the end of the day, that pays all of our paychecks.
Yeah.
And what I really admire about the linemen specifically is the amount of time they spend away from their families. So a lot of these folks
live in a motel.
They could live. They have a house, but if the work's in Nevada, they have a fifth wheel and they live out there, and sometimes their families live with them. Wow. And they create these communities,
almost like the rodeo.
Yeah, they really do. They create communities that kind of look after one another. And living in the middle of nowhere, can be very extreme heat, obviously in Nevada. But they kind of take care of their own, and just I really admire the dedication that they have to the work. They're paid very well, so it's a very good paying job.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of sacrifice that comes along with it, and I think a lot of us take on those sacrifices in all of our jobs, right? But the time they spend away is just kind of it doesn't quite make you smile, but it does in the same breath of that dedication they have to the work and where the work is.
Good. What about your management and executive level leaders? What are you looking for from them, and that make you smile when you see it?
Yeah. I really love when I see people being proactive.
Yeah.
And that's kind of hard to do, right? When you're in the thick of I feel like sometimes we're always just firefighting, right?
Yeah.
We're fighting for the monthly P&L, for the the job presentation that we have to do, the pitch to the customer, the customer interaction, whatever they need. So you always kind of feel like you're firefighting. But when I see leaders, executives or management that are being proactive about, hey, maybe seeing something before it happens, that's where what's really cool to see, because that's quite an art as well. It's kind of,
they take the initiative, they get out in front of it, and you find out about it as it's happening or after it's happening, versus the monkey being thrown on your shoulders.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we got. This,
oh, okay. Yeah, I was.
In fact, that came from one of your MasTec employees. I was speaking in Coral Gables to a crew a few weeks ago, I guess, and one of the executives at MasTec, I called her a monkey magnet. I was endearing, kind of being mean to her, at the same time. I said, you keep taking on things that someone in your team should be taking on.
Yeah.
And we call that the monkey. And so she gave that to me before I got up to speak in front of everybody, as a reminder. So that'll sit there for a while as a reminder that leadership is also about empowering others to solve problems, not to become the problem solver, ourselves. Let me ask you this, Zach. So as you said, you look back at it, 30 years of leadership. And, I don't know how much to believe from a lot of the surveys and what the higher education is telling us and what sociology is telling us. I sometimes have a little bit of cynicism, towards it, because or maybe it's just who I attract in my relationships, because I know a lot of young people who are very ambitious and who are going after it. But supposedly, there is this growing wave of younger people who they just don't have an interest in leading, or they see leading as something completely foreign to what we're talking about, today. But there are definitely those out there who they see leadership as a way of rallying people. They see it as doing something together, and naturally, there's this upward mobility desire, that they have. So I don't know whether to give you like what are the top three things, but what are the things that you would say to those younger leaders? I think here's what I think the truth is. I think a lot of them are looking at paths forward, and they don't see them.
Yeah.
They don't see paths forward in so many different organizations. They just don't see it. Even in entrepreneurialism, they don't see it. But let's say that is their desire and their passion, that they want to have an upward mobility. They want to accomplish things. They want to lead. What are some things that you would say to them to encourage them, help them with that path forward?
Yeah. I think, I think COVID was really, really a huge disservice for the younger generations. And I think this whole kind of working from home, you can kind of disappear.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons, I think one of the things that I had early on was the getting visibility, being visible to,
Oh, good point.
management,
Right.
and being able to present to management, being able to work on something for someone, got you recognized. Right?
Being available is half the battle.
It
Yeah.
really is. And actually, I think you see a lot of the CEOs right now kind of trying to get people to come back to the office. And
Are they still not in the office?
I'll tell you. I mean, just the CEO of AT&T just came out and said, 5 days a week, this is in place for you. But this is 5 years later, right?
Yeah.
And we're still talking about this, or we're actually even saying, well, look, maybe it's a hybrid. You can come in 3 days a week.
Right.
Well, look, at the end of the day, I think this. You want to talk about leadership?
Yeah.
Well, my folks didn't work from home. They couldn't work from home.
Okay.
They never
Yeah.
went home. Right. They were out in whatever business we have.
Right.
Our installers were still going to people's homes.
Yeah. You can't put power lines up from home.
You cannot do that from home. And so I think, look, if you're out there and you're leading those teams, you've got to be there with them.
Yeah.
And that's and unfortunately you have to travel to be with the teams, right? Because we're all across the United States, and so that's tough. That there's a lot of travel required. But you have to be there. You have to be present with them to really understand. And by the way, to really understand what's really happening. A spreadsheet can only tell you so much.
Right.
The P&L does tell a pretty good story, but really getting out there and being able to see what's happening in the particular office, in the yard, on the job, really, really, there's just nothing that can add up to it. There's nothing more valuable than actually being able to see the work.
Okay, so I think the number one principle that you're sharing, if I'm hearing you in a broad term, is that if you do have ambition to lead, being present, that is non-negotiable. You got to be there.
I totally agree.
Okay.
I think and I think especially for the younger generations that kind of entered the workforce working from home, right? And look, I'll work from home in certain instances, maybe before I go to the airport or whatever.
Gosh, I've never thought about that. There are people who entered the workforce working from home.
From home, yeah, the first job,
and that's all they know.
Yeah, and
Wow.
so that's what they're used to.
Yeah,
and so what seems very simple to you and I, you got to go to the office. Well, I mean, it's almost like you scratch your head. What do you mean I got to go to the office? But they're kind of going, well, wait a second. I've never been to an office.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're talking about younger generations that you almost have to, you almost have to kind of reprogram them on
well,
really
I grew up in a day where I could not take work home because those were confidential files.
Yeah.
So you had to go to the office to work. Yeah.
So I think that's that's
a big one.
I think that's the more time we can spend with the younger generations to really help them understand. It's not about it's not we want to penalize them, right, to have to come to an office, but really being visible,
right.
The value of being seen,
right,
and being able to work. And look, there's people like in my office. If I didn't If I wasn't in the office and I walk by their office and we have a 5-10 minute chat, I would never have that interaction, because that may be a person that I wouldn't pick up the phone and call. So the value of being able to kind of walk around and be able to have conversations can trigger ideas.
Yeah.
Can kind of spark new ideas, can spark potential problems that if I was just going through my day,
That's really good.
with my meetings or phone calls I need to make, that interaction I may have with someone I know I wouldn't have called can change the direction of the day. It can actually change the direction of the company.
Wow. That's the first chapter of my next book that I've been working on. It's entitled Imagination. And it's almost like, which sounds really weird that I would feel the need to write a chapter about imagination in a world that has created the iPhone, the laptop computers, AI. Yet I see less and less creativity and imagination and problem solving. And you just said something, Zach, that triggered an aha in me. And it's that sales itself has been delegated to a sales funnel, where even technology is doing all the sales for people and for organizations, where the sales guy, the saleswoman, you don't see too many of them anymore. And you kind of see that. And here's my theory. Just run with me here. You can disagree with it if you want. But I see that inability to sell somebody on an idea now spreading to other disciplines like hospitality, where if you don't ask for it as a client, they're not going to offer it. And I see hospitality as on a massive decline. I'm kind of a butthead when it comes to hospitality. We're known around here for being restaurant critics. My wife and I are having a hard time finding a place to go that we go, all right, now this is, and we're not just talking about the food, we're talking about the whole experience. And then the hotels, we've been looking for a place to go for a little vacation. And it's just amazing to me how some of the hospitality venues are disappearing and all this self-serve, kind of stuff. But I think that's kind of related when I'm going back to a comment that you made, that what you really appreciate about managers and leaders in your organization is when they're proactive. And I mean, you used to have to run from salespeople. Now you're looking for them. Where are they?
It's pretty crazy.
Is it just me?
No, you're right. There's nothing that beats a conversation with a human being.
Yeah.
The IVRs you get thrown into, via when you call into it.
Yeah.
That's just maddening, right? And I don't want to go if I want to go order a cup of coffee, I don't want to do it from a kiosk. I want to just talk to the person and say, hey, this is what I'd like, right?
Well, I know you don't eat it.
Pretty simple, but it's
I know you don't eat at fast foods, but my grandkids bugged me like 6 months ago that they wanted something from McDonald's. I forget what it was. So we ended up going into this new McDonald's, and it was the funniest thing you've ever seen. They had these kiosks everywhere, and they had an employee assigned to every kiosk, teaching people how to use the kiosk instead of taking their order.
Yeah.
It was ironic, right? It was ironic. Funny stuff. Okay, so you've mentioned this proactive, this take initiative, this presence. Anything else that you would share with people that are trying to work themselves up and become a better leader?
Yeah, we our team came up with something a couple of years ago that I really think sticks and kind of defines the overall leadership process. Right, is really protecting your business.
Yeah,
but more protecting your people first and foremost. Protecting the business.
Yeah.
And protecting the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really do all three of those things, you think about those three things each day, and that really just drives the whole organization. And if you can get everyone kind of thinking that way, everything kind of takes care of itself.
I heard you give that talk for the first time, and I've heard you give it multiple times. And the cool news is I've actually heard it repeated by leadership down as far as a director that I met virtually. I have still not met this person in person, but verbatim gave that talk back to me. So it's working. I think one of the other things that leaders get frustrated with is that they said something And so why do they have to say it again and again? But you do. Whatever the vision is that you're casting, you have to say it again and again and again, just like with your wife. If you're, or your husband, if you're married and you didn't say, I love you today, man, that's a mistake. You got to say it again and again and again and again, and to your kids and all of that. I think that's, and I'm going to run with that here, but here's my but. There's a gap that I'm finding that when leaders cast vision, how do we know that it's been received in a way that it's being implemented? They might be able to repeat it. So when that young man repeated your speech back to me, first of all, I said to him, where did you hear that? And his boss is one of your main inner circle leaders. And he said, that's where we heard it from. So I thought, okay, that's even more awesome. So I'm getting totally excited about hearing this. But then I turned around and I asked him, so what does that look like on a daily basis? So now that's what we're working on through there. But one of the things I'd like to add on, if I can, to what you're saying is, so you're saying protect your protect your people, and in your context, it's safety.
Yep.
Protect your business. That's the mental ability to manage a P&L, to manage a business, to understand the principles of business. And what was the third one?
And protecting our customer.
And protecting the customer. So those are the three things. Here's what I wonder about leaders, if they were given that as the vision, the parameters, in which to operate. I wonder if they have learned how to take enough time, due to the firefighting that you're talking about, take enough time to stop. I don't think it takes much more than a half an hour a week, maybe an hour at the most, to look back at their previous week and say, how did I do in those three areas? Yeah. And does my calendar reflect that? Yeah. Because one of the things that I'm trying to teach right now, Zach, in our work is that you have your calendar for this week, you have your calendar for next week, but whose calendar actually works out that way?
Yeah, never.
Right. So what I'm suggesting that we do is at the end of every day, let's go back to that calendar and make it reflect what actually happened for this purpose. So that when I look back at the past week, I can see what actually happened. And then I can ask the question, how did I take care of my people, my business, and my customer? Yeah. And then hopefully then look forward and be proactive, using your term, and then start blocking, making sure, and now looking at appointments that, I agreed to that maybe I probably should get out of, as embarrassing as that is. Because one of the things that I've noticed that have cost people the most in their leadership is that the most expensive thing that you own is your ego. And sometimes your ego causes you to stick with something just because you said you would. And so you've interpreted that to character and integrity, instead of saying, hey, you know what, I made a mistake of agreeing to this. I am so sorry. How can I make it up to you? But I cannot do that. Or simply letting our own hubris, our own pride get in the way of making some of the decisions, that we need to make. Yeah. Like, I blew it. I own this, it's my mistake. Yeah. But that was a long dissertation to say, I wonder how many now are learning what that really means. And do they have the discipline of evaluating, looking back, and then making adjustments? Yeah. As a way of leading on a daily basis. Because sometimes I think leaders think of grand slams. Yeah. Instead of base hits.
I actually think you hit on something that I think we should make sure we capture is it's okay to, tell your team that you made a mistake. Yeah. Right. You don't want to overdo it. Right. Right. But you definitely, I think people
you don't want it to be a therapy session.
Where but I do think you can actually say, hey, you know what? I messed this up. Right. I made a bad hire. I, made a mistake, and here's what I'm doing to fix it. And it kind of goes along with there's no such thing as a dumb question. Right. But that, I think that's one of the things that really kind of petrifies people, right? Mm-hmm. Is I don't want to ask a stupid question. Well, right. And it's probably because, I'm a little bit longer in the tooth now from a I'm probably a little bit more comfortable in my own skin because of the years in the seat. Yeah. But, coming into this new world, right? Into power delivery, I didn't know anything about. I mentioned that. So I was very upfront about, hey, I don't know
Yeah.
anything about this business. And so I'm going to ask really dumb questions probably, right? But I think some of those, it's kind of funny. I think that it's going to be a dumb question. And actually it's a pretty good question, so it's kind of interesting. I think you just got to make sure that
I think it's
you
really
do
good.
not feel bad about asking a dumb question.
And I think there's a reason behind that, because I think it matches leadership's number one mistake, which is we assume, right? We assume that this is obvious. We assume that you've run the same road that I have, that you've got burned the same way I've been burned. I don't know why we do that, but we do that. And so when a younger leader thinks maybe I shouldn't ask this question, or they're thinking a question, but it stays in their head, probably needs to come out through their mouth and ask the question. Because then what it does is it helps us. I think the relational dynamic that happens from questions is that it reminds the older leader, we're speaking from an older perspective. So, hopefully people will take this to heart. When you ask us questions, in a weird way, it also reminds us of what we know. We've already forgotten what we know.
Yeah, right.
And so
Many times over, right?
it gets shoved down into our assumption box. It's just there because I know I'm not the smartest guy in the world. So if I know something, you probably already know it. And so often when young people ask me questions, I was just at a little quick meeting at Chipotle the other day with a young man who asked me 2 or 3 questions. And I was delighted to answer those questions. And I forgot that at that age, I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Right. Or I didn't have the insight, to that either. Anything else you would share with a younger leader?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, from a leadership perspective, I want to make sure I hit this. So you've seen the movie Master Commander?
Yes.
Okay. So very, very good leadership movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually. And I actually think, having someone take you through a movie that's tied to leadership is actually a pretty good way to learn about leadership. What's cool about that is what's called, above deck, below deck.
Right.
And
this is an older ship.
Yep, older ship. But what's neat about watching that leadership in that movie?
Can I hit it? Pause button for a minute?
Absolutely.
What you're talking, because I want you to finish this.
Okay.
Because what you're talking about is so important of what leaders don't do anymore. How I got exposed to that movie was I hired a coach, and for the life of me, I cannot remember the context, but I hired a coach. The first thing he said, there's a showing of a movie that I want us to go see. It was one of those theaters that had the old movies. I want you to meet me there at such and such a time. And we went to the theater together and watched that movie.
Originally, when it came out?
When it came out.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you recognize it as the leadership capabilities in the first time you saw it?
Well, no.
No, I didn't either.
No. That's the honest answer. In fact, I was thinking, why am I sitting here in the theater with another dude watching a movie? But then afterwards, we debriefed over a cheeseburger and whatnot. And then he, and obviously I clued in after that.
Yeah. Well, what's neat about it is leaders can get tied up below deck.
Yes.
And if you never come up to kind of see what's happening above deck,
right,
he comes up and you go, so that's that strategy piece, right. You're above deck, you're kind of making sure you're not going to run into an iceberg or whatever the case may be. But you also need to go below deck to make sure that, to your point, that the assumptions you have are actually right.
Yeah.
And making sure that balance is how much time, because what you'll have is you'll get sucked below deck a lot.
Yes.
I mean, and it's I know you talk about the calendar piece, which I could do a lot better job. But almost every time we talk, you mentioned something about that. But going back and actually say, okay, what did I actually do against those 3 things? Right. Is it takes some time, but it doesn't take a lot of time.
Right.
And I think you do it a couple times, I think you'll probably be pretty shocked.
Yeah.
Number one, that wow, I could have been a lot more productive. Yeah. And I didn't even and everything I did last week, none of them went to those 3 things. Now it's hard to not have one of those line up. Yeah. But actually, spending that time and trying to balance how much time you spend below deck and above deck and what you do when you're below deck versus what you do above deck, I think is the art of the leadership piece.
Zach, I want to ask you one more broad question before we close this episode. But before I ask you the question, would you come do this again?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, this is
because I think we've just scratched the surface, on a lot of things. Um, from my vantage point, we talked about how many employees you have. We talked about the reality of literal death that happens in your business. You're also a publicly traded company, which we didn't even get a chance to talk to, and the nuances of that. We've talked about a lot of things that you've learned, but my purpose in life, besides my faith, what's built on top of my faith is shaping leaders who are healthy and effective. And that's, a really short way of saying it. And so, as you know, in our relationship, I've always been concerned about, your health, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, physically. How a person in your role, I mean, you're on a plane all the time. I don't know of anybody who flies more than you do. Um, where are you at in taking care of yourself and all those aspects?
I was kind of hoping you wouldn't get to that question, 'cause I thought we were gonna run out of time. I got to tell you, I don't do a very good job of it.
Really?
I say that kind of in light. There's times I do a very good job of that, or very thoughtful about it.
Yeah.
But there'll also be weeks that go by and you kind of take a step back and go, wow, I really neglected this or that.
A day turns into a month really quick.
It does. It does. So you have to really, again, it goes back to that calendar time.
Mm-hmm.
You actually have to and if you, and by the way, I'm not very effective at this either, but you actually have to put it on your calendar.
Yeah.
So if you put your workout on your calendar, just like you would a meeting, what will happen? Well, you'll actually do it. You'll at least think about it.
Right.
And if it's not on your calendar, well, then you just run out of time.
And if you don't do it, and in your evaluation process, you get another reminder of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I think, and then I think all of those type of things, and then you can actually go back and see how many workouts did I get done, or how much time did I spend with my wife or my kids or whatever the case may be. What's important to you, right, gets done.
Yeah. And
I think that's where you just got to be very mindful, and especially in these kind of chaotic times where you're chasing a P&L, or we're chasing a project, or we're chasing a job that may have gone bad, or all the different stresses of the job. And it's not just my job, it's everyone's job in the organization.
Right.
And that's kind of where we talked about earlier. Remember, kind of just touched on, you don't know what's happening to that person.
Yeah.
Or what that person's actually going through today. So really being in tune there of what's happening will make you a better leader, to be a better teammate ultimately.
So I'm not going to let you off the hook. So.
Oh, what do I do?
Yeah.
Well, look, I don't like to read a lot.
Yeah.
But, because the stuff I have to read, but I've actually tried to spend more time reading, like stuff that I enjoy, like even if it's just a fun book. Like I'm rereading right now, A Pirate Looks at 50.
Beautiful.
Jimmy Buffett's book. And I read a long time ago, but I've actually reread it, and it's interesting. I'm picking up different things this time around, and it's just something that you can kind of, instead of looking at your phone or watching a movie or anything, it's quieter actually.
Slows you down.
It is that, just kind of that reading a book, or I also have been very mindful of is walking. Is spending time walking. And if I just get out, even if it's 5 minutes on the hour, and just take one quick lap around the building, it really, that time outside, the natural light, because all the blue lights we're exposed to on the screens and everything else, that 5 minutes is just really mind clearing. And really is something that I've been very mindful of. Just taking a quick walk. That's simple.
What about your family and your faith? How are you doing in that?
My girls are getting older now too.
They are,
and there's a lot. It's a different stage in life, right? So they're on the go, and so I try to spend as much time or hitting a school event and making sure I'm mindful around my schedule, to make sure I hit those events with them. And sometimes I do a good job there, and sometimes I don't. And then I think too, when you have a child that's getting ready to go away to college, right? That that's a little scary too, because it's like, wow, all of a sudden they're going to be gone. So make sure that you take that time to schedule those events as well.
I press you on those things because your strengths are so darn obvious. The things that I've appreciated about you the most is that, maybe the reason why you struggle with your calendar is because the opposite of that is you are extremely agile. You're one of the most agile people I've ever met. I've also known you to be an extremely heart-led leader. That's what I would call you're smart, you're intelligent, but you're a heart guy. That's how I would describe you. I would also, with that comes generous and compassionate. I see you didn't really talk about this, but I'm going to lay these out. I see you as extremely patient with your team. You want the best for your team, and I think they know that. I think they sense that. So I know that though you were a guy on the run, running this huge organization, I also know you to be a pretty deep thinker and a feeler, and knowing you is an honor and it's a privilege, to walk through this journey with you, because it hasn't been boring.
I know it is not.
It hasn't been boring.
I appreciate it. It's very kind, by the way.
Yeah, no, I mean those things.
Well, and you've helped me with a lot of situations, which has been very helpful. And I think that's one of the other things that I would say to anyone, watching this today is make sure you do get yourself a coach. You hire a coach for, a sport, your trainer, whatever, to help you, an executive coach, a coach for any level can help you see your blind spots. And I think that's what you've helped me with over the years.
I think what I want to do next when we do this podcast again is, we're so comfortable with each other. I think what we do is we don't have an agenda. We just sit and we talk about leadership. We just talk about whatever and see what comes up. I think that'd be great.
That'd be great. I'd love it.
Zach McGuire. Yeah, Zach McGuire, President Power Delivery of MasTec. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jim.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us on the Today Counts show. We got so much more planned for you. So stay tuned and stay connected on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. And remember, today counts.